Hello and welcome to Eye on Africa, covering all the news from across the continent here on France 24, coming up on tonight's show. As the M23 rebels continue to make advances in the eastern DRC, thousands have been forced to flee their homes. All the while, the Congolese army and regional troops are stepping up their offensive against the militants. We go on the ground with the Kenyan military to see what's at stake. Then, as COP27 draws to a close, many African nations have been left less than satisfied. It comes as countries of the global north continue to push back against a deal endorsing the creation of a financing facility for the countries hardest hit by climate change. And it's not just people who are set to feel the effects of the changing weather. Africa's landmarks are now also at risk. To protect them, countries are seeking to add these sites to the famous UNESCO heritage list. Thanks for joining us. 8 kilometers north of Goma in the eastern DRC, several thousand people have sought refuge, living in terror as the M23 rebels continue to advance. In response, government forces have begun to step up their offensive, deploying 2 warplanes on Thursday, with the ECOWAS regional bloc also calling on the rebels to disarm. Our team of Vivian Wandera and Bastien Ronil have been accompanying Kenyan troops as they head to Goma from Nairobi. This is what they have seen.
2 months after DRC's President Felix Tshisekedi signed the agreement to send the troops from the East African Regional Forces to Congo, Kenyan soldiers are now being deployed. The chief of the Kenya Defense Forces took time to remind them of their mission.
We are not going to fight the negative forces. First, we are going to create conditions for political interventions that are critical. And one is to ensure that we participate in support of the DRC security forces to disarm and demobilize the belligerents.
Inside this plane are about 50 members of the Kenya Defense Forces who are headed to the Democratic Republic of Congo to prepare for the arrival of combatants who will be in the East African Regional Forces, and they will arrive in the DRC in a few days. Kenya's parliament approved the deployment of 900 troops. However, their commanders and Congolese military leaders are working on how they will conduct operations together.
Many things are going to change, and we're moving to an offensive mission to restore peace in our country, the DRC, with a priority on M23.
Though the DRC wants an offensive, Kenya is pushing for a defensive and political solution.
As a force commander, that is very clear to me. We are here to protect and defend the Goma International Airport, including the force headquarters, as the rest of the processes continues.
For now, it is unclear how long the East African Regional Force is going to be in the DRC. Though their mandate says that they should be here for a period of 6 months, this could be extended depending on the circumstances.
That was Vivian Wandera from Nairobi. In Egypt, the family of imprisoned activist Alaa Abdel Fattah was allowed to visit him for the first time in over 3 weeks. In an emotional statement, his sister said they worry about his situation and repeated calls for him to be released. Our correspondent Edouard Cousin reveals the latest.
The case of imprisoned activist Alaa Abdel Fattah has been a major topic surrounding this conference in Egypt. He had been in a hunger strike since last April and stopped drinking water altogether since the start of the COP. On Thursday afternoon, his mother, his aunt and his sister were allowed to visit him in prison. They said he looked very frail and thin, was happy to see his family again.
He looked very frail, but I'm more worried about his mental health state and that it's volatile, and that the way the prison operates, they're very cruel. It's not that the personnel themselves are cruel, the kind of orders they're giving are very strict and cruel.
Alaa Abdel Fattah told his family that he had lost conscious in his cell, and when he woke up he found that he was being put on IV. A few days later he started drinking water and eating out of his own will again. But he pledged his family he would start his hunger strike again if there's no real movement in his case. His family will continue campaigning for his release, tomorrow during the last day of the COP and after.
Of course, we'll continue to provide updates on the state of Ala Abdel Fattah. Poorer nations on the front lines of climate change say they'll be hit hardest should COP27 end without an agreement on funding from the global north to deal with worsening loss and damage. Earlier, I spoke to community trainer and climate educator Barbara Kangwana, who has been at the talks in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt. She says the summit's solutions for Africa in the climate crisis have left her unconvinced.
Right now, we really need urgent action. And we are really hoping, especially we as Africans, we as the country, the really vulnerable countries, the countries that are already facing the loss and damage, we're really hoping that this would be an implementation COP. So we really hope that by the time the outcome is coming out, we're going to get something really, really positive. Africa is trying to shift to renewable energy, but the global emissions that Africa produces are way less than 5%. So if Africa is shifting to renewable energy, this means that we're only reducing the global emissions by 5%. That is not enough. We need more action from the global north. We need more action from developed countries. We need to do more. We need to think of it from a human perspective. We need to start putting human beings in the middle of it all. And we don't have to wait to pay for loss and damage reparations. Loss and damage is like the intensive care unit of the accident. So if we can prevent the accident by mitigating, if we can prevent the accident by adapting, we don't have to pay for the intensive care unit bill. So we don't have to wait until we get to loss and damage. So we need to act. The mood from COP27 has been a bit laid back, and it's stalled, to be honest. So we need to act with more urgency if we are to do this, because islands are disappearing. We're never going to get that back, even if we pay people for loss and damage. So we need to look at what's at stake and stop being selfish about it.
Many people on the ground across Africa are being forced to take ecological action into their own hands. In Benin, young activists are using social media to raise awareness about waste disposal and environmental protection. At 25 years old, Anas Seko regularly treats his thousands of followers to engaging videos with a message. Laurent Berstecker has more.
Armed with plastic gloves and rice bags, these young volunteers carefully comb the back streets of Cotonou for discarded trash. They've all answered the call of Anas Seko, a 25-year-old activist on a mission to raise awareness about waste disposal in Benin.
It starts with indignation, anger at seeing all this rubbish, seeing others just throwing their waste away into nature. I said to myself, no, this is a problem. We have to change things. We have to get involved.
In order to reach out to younger generations, Seko regularly speaks at primary schools and maintains a strong social media presence. He films and shares videos to encourage his thousands of followers to better take care of their surroundings.
He can reach out to even more young people this way and help them stand up for themselves. We can make a change to our environment.
As the COP27 conference continues to unfold in Egypt, Seko hopes world leaders can set their differences aside to achieve tangible results.
We still have this squabbling between countries over who will reduce their fossil fuels and so on. We'd like to see concrete results come from COP27, to see big decisions that can succeed.
His efforts may only amount to a drop in the ocean, yet Anas Seko believes education and community outreach still have a major role to play to bring about long-term change.
A drop in the ocean, but could it affect the future for those young generations? Africa is the big focus at the UNESCO Conference on World Heritage. The event, which is being held in the surroundings of the Delphi archaeological site in Greece, marks 50 years since the Convention on World Heritage was signed. Delegates are debating how to save iconic sites from the twin ravages of war and climate change. But they're also looking at ways to get more sites in Africa on the UNESCO Heritage List. France 24's Andrew Hilliard has more from Delphi.
The big promise coming out of UNESCO's conference here in Delphi in Greece, more help for Africa. That's because the continent is hugely underrepresented on the UNESCO World Heritage List. Only 10% of sites on that list are in Africa. There are many reasons for that. One is that many countries are racked by war and instability. Another is that many of those countries simply don't have the technical know-how to go through the administrative procedures to get sites on the list. And that's something that UNESCO is keen to change.
Africa, I mean, it's the cradle of the humanity, like people say, and the diversity and richness of the continent has yet to be discovered. And we feel that Africa, being a priority of the organization, we need to accompany them, to assist them to identify all the potentials by identifying the sites, but also by preparing, the successful nomination dossiers to see some of the sites recognized in the World Heritage and really represent the full diversity of the continent.
Well, one of the big measures announced here is more help, more support to those countries to help them get sites on the list before 2030 and to safeguard them for future generations. Another big announcement, the creation of local educational programs to teach young people in schools about the heritage that's often right on their doorstep. But the big message here from UNESCO is that the world needs to act now to save our heritage over the next 50 years.
And finally, Senegal fans, shut your eyes, cover your ears. Sadio Mane has been ruled out of the World Cup. The Senegalese Football Federation announced that the Bayern Munich striker will not be flying to Qatar, unable to recover from a recent leg injury on time, and now, in fact, requiring surgery. It's a devastating blow for the Lions of Teranga, who will now be without the man who scored both the winning penalty against Egypt to lift the African Cup of Nations and the winning final spot kick to qualify for the World Cup. Of course, more questions bound to be asked in terms of the timing of the World Cup just days after the domestic seasons across Europe and the rest of the world have finished. But unfortunately for Sadio Mane, the tournament coming too soon for him. Well, to leave on that note, that's all we have from Eye on Africa for this evening. But there's plenty of news coming up on France 24. It's bye for me for now.